Hey everybody, welcome back to the Men of the Kingdom podcast. It is your host, Kyle. This is my one and only co-host, Aaron Lang. I'm super excited to be back with you guys. We want to say welcome back to the channel if you are one of our faithful viewers. And if you're new to this channel, we also want to say welcome. Purpose of the show is to help men live successful lives according to God's design. So we appreciate you joining us. And if you are one of your faithful watchers, you might notice our table from the other show. Aaron was nice enough to reach out to the owners of the last place we were renting. This is kind of where it all started on this table with the podcast. So it's really cool to have it back at our new place, recording it. So you might recognize it. But Aaron, apart from this awesome table, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Excited for this episode, talking about one of my favorite things. Always excited for a new year. I think just in general, New Year's are a really good time to reflect, think back. And we talked about it a little bit, but man, we've had a great year. It's been super fun sharing all these episodes. Yeah. What is this episode number 20 already?
20.
Yeah, that's crazy. Wild. That's super crazy. So, and I know we got some big goals. We've been in the lab talking about what we want to do for next year. And I'm just excited. Like, out of everything I have going on this year, this podcast is probably like the one thing I'm most excited about just really diving into.
Even more so than getting married, you said, right?
No. If Sammy is hearing this or watching this, I'm definitely more excited about that. Hey. But hey, when I'm not wedding planning, if I can find time to work these episodes in, that's awesome. A lot of great things. But yeah, what about you, man? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It hasn't really set in yet, but it's almost. I'm trying to remember when we started the podcast. Do you remember what month?
Man, let's see. I think it was late January or mid to late January last year.
So it was the start of the year, almost a year, basically was my point.
Very close.
Now we're 20 episodes deep, and that came, I don't know if I would say it came out of a New Year's resolution, but it was something that was on our heart we wanted to start.
Yeah, true.
And now we're a year later, 20 episodes deep. And so it's just cool, like how fast time has flown, what's happened, transpired in our lives. It's just really, really cool.
Well, and this is a question that we asked each other, but maybe we'll have a different answer and even sharing with the viewers. So one of the things we did, we tried to reflect on this last year. What did we do with the show that we were most happy with? Yeah. What are some things we want to improve? And then what do we want to do this year? So now that our viewers are watching, they're kind of in on the conversation. What would you say is the one thing from the podcast last year you're most proud of?
Oh, most proud of? Aaron and I talked about this. There's a couple things I want to say. One, I think, is starting. And we're going to talk about it a little bit here. Like, it's perfect timing with New Year's resolutions.
No doubt.
I just want to start something. And it's really easy to have these ideas like, hey, it would be great to start a YouTube channel. Hey, it would be great to find a new job. It'd be great to start getting in shape. Whatever your great to do is. And Aaron and I, we've always been people who like to educate, like to help people, and like to learn ourselves. And it all kind of came together perfect timing. We were living together. We had the resources. COVID was set in. Yep. And for a lot of people, that was, man, this sucks. I'm just going to sit around and watch Netflix.
Totally.
But it's like, hey, how do we maximize this time that we're together? How can we be using the talents and the knowledge we've accumulated over the years? So I think I'm most proud that we started it and stuck with it. We're 20 episodes deep, and I think the fire is like getting flamed where it's starting to grow, where it's not like, hey, like, what do you want to do this week? It's no, hey, for this year, these are what we want to do. So what we want to accomplish. We're looking at merchandise, just like things we can do to grow the channel, but ultimately is add value for you guys. And like our purpose statement is to advance the kingdom. So I think, one, I'm just proud that we started it. I wouldn't do this without anybody else. I'm so happy to have you across the table for me. And like, there's a million other things I could say, but hopefully they pale in comparison to when we get to the end of this year and we look back and it's like, wow, we accomplished all those things. So just starting it, God's been faithful to us. So those are my things. But what about you?
Man, I mean, I could definitely say that too. I think, I think for me, a lot of it has to do with just capturing stories. And honestly too, you'll hear about that. Kind of a teaser, but a few of the things we're going to talk about involve people we've had in past episodes. Yeah. If you haven't watched those, we're at episode 20. We're going to be having a lot of guests in this year, so stay tuned for that. If you know anyone who'd be great to be on the show, let us know. We're actively, trying to think of people for this year. But when I look at our initial guests and that group of people that we had, that makes me so proud, just sharing those people's stories, because those are people that brought us to faith, developed our faith, that we're inspired by. And I just think that's cool, man. And especially thinking of Beth, sharing her story. She's meant the world to us. And just knowing that now a small piece of Beth's inspiration and motivation is now, and her love for God and the way she lived is now on the internet forever. And so I think that's cool. And like you said, it's just the beginning. And I can't wait to share more good stories this year too.
100%. Yeah, it's been great, man. It's been a ride. And I'm just excited to see what comes. So Let's jump right into it. One of our things we've always tried to do when we have these episodes is not just to be on here as talking heads. It's one to hopefully inspire you guys, push you closer to God, but also give you practical things you can do to change your life. Yep. When you get done watching these episodes, we don't want it to be like, oh, those guys seem cool. All right, I'm going to go do what I've always done. No, we want you to be...
It's like, oh, that was a good YouTube video clip.
Unsubscribe. But no, we want to give you guys practical things you can do. And I think not more than anything, but a huge part of both Aaron and my development in life, what shaped us into the men we are currently and where we're going to be, is books and reading. And I think I might have mentioned in other episodes, but I did not always like reading. Seriously.
Yeah, me too. Me either, man.
Really?
I'm the son of a librarian. My mom used to have to sit me down and put me in a headlock to read a book.
And actually, Aaron was one of the guys who kind of got me started. I don't know what it was. I think he recommended a book, started reading it, and just kind of grew over time.
Well, I taught you how to read.
Sound it out, buddy. Come on. I'm in my dorm room. He's got like his arm around me.
That's not a true story.
not a true story, but probably close to it. And so what we wanted to do with the start of the new year, we didn't want to give you guys resolutions. We wanted to give you books that have helped shape us in some way or have been recommended to us that hopefully you guys would take initiative, read them, and hopefully it has the impact on your lives as it had to us. So without further ado, 10 books you should read in 2022. Aaron, why don't you kick us off?
Boom, let's do it. I don't know why. We're just in a hilarious mood tonight, so this episode's going to be good. But okay, so getting back to the last episode of 2021, we had our guy Travis Manderfield on there. We'll link that in here. Trav's one of the greatest disciples. I call him, what did I say? The farmer of men. Because this dude is just out there planting seeds in the kingdom. And brought me to faith, has brought countless people in our church to faith. Really cool thing, if you're watching this episode, Trav just took a job. What's his executive pastor?
Executive pastor.
Yeah, as executive pastor at our church, Salt City Church in Minneapolis.
Really cool.
Incredible. Could not be more proud of him. It just happened that the timing was he was going to be on our show. Yeah. So that's why we didn't introduce him in that role, because we wanted to push the episode out before they announced that. But if you're watching this and you're in the Twin Cities, I would highly recommend check out Salt City Church. Kyle and I will introduce you to Trav. It was cool. Even last week at church, we had a few people who said, hey, I saw Trav on your podcast. I have a question for him, or I want to meet him. And kind of tying two things together. So you're talking about books and advice, and Trav gave a lot of great tips. So if you haven't watched that, please do. But one of the things that he sprinkled in there was a book that he read. And something I'm really big on is when people that are as smart as Trav or people that I really respect recommend a book, I don't waste any time. I add that to my cart. Boom. Now, another pro tip, I try to wait until I have over $25 in Amazon so that thing ships for free. But the book that he recommended, and I've been waiting to say this guy's name, I think it's Dietrich Bonhoeffer. So Trav, you can recommend me. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But the book is The Cost of Discipleship. And it's about, a lot of times as Christians, and even on the show, we talk about this of, the ways that God can bless you and, how living a God-fearing life and living according to the Bible is the best life. But he's taking another spin of, living that life and following Jesus doesn't come without a cost. And this guy actually gave his life for his beliefs. So this was his story. He wrote this book, but it didn't get published until he had died and basically gotten convicted for being a Christian. So
that's crazy.
I actually have not read this book yet, but any book that has the Travis Manderfield seal of approval has mine. So that's my first one, is The Cost of Discipleship.
I was for sure. I thought you said what it's about. I thought you were going to start reading the back.
I
was waiting for it.
I got close to be, this book is a New York Times bestseller.
I mean, what can I call this?
I started reading one of the reviews. Wait, is Trav on the back here? I thought
is that his photo? I see it.
I thought maybe he wrote one of the recommendations.
That's awesome. I'm excited for you to read that. I would love to check it out because I think that's such a great reminder. I think sometimes when we think as Christians, it's like, oh, you're following Jesus, your life's going to be easy, no problems. And, to be frank with you guys, had a pretty intimate conversation with Aaron before here, just some things on my heart and things you go through. But it is, it's the perfect title, The Cost of Discipleship. What it takes to follow Jesus is everything. You're giving everything up, but because of that, you're gaining a life that is beyond amazing, which is actually...
Oh, my gosh.
That was one of my better segues. Yeah, I didn't even intend to do that at the beginning of the show. But speaking of books that were recommended, my mother actually got this for me. It's called A Life Beyond Amazing by Dr. Jeremiah. Really, really good book. It kind of goes through just a bunch of different areas of your life, but basically spiritual practices that are biblically grounded to help you live your best life. Oftentimes when we think of living your best life as well, you're financially stable, got a good wife, kids, et cetera, but that's not necessarily what it means to live a life that God has for you. So it's really, really cool. Great book. It's an easier read. Some of these books that I actually really enjoy are more theological or just really in the weeds. This one's a little more high level, but it still is really, really good. So Life Beyond Amazing, Dr. Jeremiah. Mom, if you're watching this, thank you for gifting it to me. Really enjoyed it. That is book number 2 for your 2022 list.
All right. Shout out, Julianne. So going on to the third book, I have Explicit Gospel by a guy named Matt Chandler. If you're not familiar with Matt Chandler, he's the pastor at the Village Church. Actually, just giving Trav even more love. I think this is one of Trav's favorite pastors. You should check out some sermons by him too. So this book, this is really weird. You can vouch for me. I am a big reader. I've read a lot of books. I have not read these two, but these are on my book list. So I'm giving you guys these recommendations. I'll take them. Maybe sometime after this, we can do like our favorite books of the first few months. But I've heard that this is one of the best books at just simply explaining the good news of the gospel, not like in a complex theological way, just to simply, hey, this is what this means. As the name suggests, as you can tell, I'm kind of trying to explain as much as I can, but I have not read it.
Right.
But this is probably, these two books have both been recommended to me by numerous people. Matt Chandler's incredible. So Matt Chandler, if you're watching this, keep up the good work.
I'd like to have you on the show if you'd like
we
to.
We would like to have you on the show, but if Matt Chandler's not watching it, you should be watching Matt Chandler. Second book is Explicit Gospel.
Awesome. Good stuff. Cool. I'm just going to keep rattling through here. A book that is near and dear to my heart. We touched on, it was 2 episodes ago, I believe it was.
Yep, the habits.
Yeah, the habits of successful men. And one of mine was just around communication. So actually one of my good friends and brothers, our pastor made Ashanti Payne, if you're watching this. He had it. I picked it up. I thought I saw the title. I thought it was cool. Really, really enjoyed the book, but it's called to How to Talk to Anyone. 92 Little Tricks for Big Success in Relationships. But it's really, really cool. I like books that I can read something, go out tomorrow and actually implement or practice. Right. And so it's really easy read. You guys can go through it. They're about a couple pages, 1 to maybe 3 pages each tip. So for example, I'll just scroll this one. How to talk to them, getting the insider's price on practically anything you buy. So it's like how to talk to them into getting the insider's price, So it's like a simple tip, like, hey, you're at some event, how do you actually get inside information? Just like really practical things, but it's really, really good things that you can start implementing in your life. Things I didn't even think about that I've used from it. But if you want to build really good relationships, it comes down to good and effective communication. And this is one that I think you really enjoy. So again, How to Talk to Anyone, 92 Tips and Tricks.
Cool. So this is one that I definitely could have led with. And if I had to only recommend one book from this episode, especially this time of year, right? One of my rhythms, this book, oh my gosh, at this time of year, I read this book every single year. I usually read it sometime between December 20th and New Year's Eve, and it helps me set up my whole year. So I think there actually might be more to come on this. We kind of had talked through an idea for an episode of giving you guys even more to chew on as you're planning out your whole year. So stay tuned for that. But the book that can help you right away is Your Best Year Ever by Michael Hyatt. And this is a great question to ask somebody, is what's your most gifted book? Like, what's the book that you have given to the most amount of people? Because I think you can learn a lot about, why did you give that book? What part is it? Right. How did that book impact you? And this book has completely changed my life. We talked about in that episode 2 of planning out your weeks. That whole system came from this book. So Your Best Year Ever by Michael Hyatt. It'll help you set goals. It'll help you reflect on those goals weekly. It will help you understand your motivations for why you're setting what goals you are. Cannot say enough good things about this book. You should definitely read that one. Hey, read whatever one of these you want first, but if you're looking for practicality and you're feeling lost, I would start with that one.
Really good. And you use their planner that kind of coincides, correct?
I don't have it with me, but the Full Focus Planner by Michael Hyatt. Yep, that's another good one. Yeah. Yep, that's a kind of a day-by-day version of what he talks about for the system in this book.
Yeah. And Aaron's probably one of the more intentional and consistent guys I've seen personally when it comes to planning out your week, being consistent. He sits down. Typically, I see him because Sunday nights we're usually both around, but he'll go through. I remember countless times at our place in Minnetonka, he'd be in the little library room with his feet up, going through his week, reviewing what does he plan for the week. So it's just cool to see him. And it was funny. I was sitting over in the chair that you guys probably can't see. He was on the computer that sits back here, and he was just reading some of your goals I think it's from a couple years ago.
Yeah.
It's just funny to see how you've grown as a person, just in the way you set goals, what you've already accomplished, and you look back, it's like, man, those seem like child's play to where I'm at now. But I think a lot of that is attributed to setting good goals.
Totally.
And being consistent with it. So really, if you have questions about setting goals and that kind of thing, seriously, this is your man to talk to. So
don't talk to me, talk to Michael Hyatt.
well,
and if Michael Hyatt, if you're watching this,
please.
we'll take you on the show too.
We'll take you. Keep moving. Another one that my mom got me. I thought this one was really interesting. It might come out of left
Julianne
field.
just plugging these books
Seriously.
left and right.
It's called The Non-Prophet's Guide to End Time Prophecy. Well, I think of what the Bible says, talks a lot about the end time and what's to come. And really that can be intimidating for a lot of people, even for Christians, because there's a lot of things we don't understand or things that are hard to understand. Maybe it's the way they wrote back in the day. So this really, and it's pretty easy to read, it gives a lot of illustrations, almost like a kid's book. It almost looks like a kid's book if you were to pick that up. But it just goes through end time prophecy, what's been fulfilled. But for me, from the understanding part's really important, but two, it's just from the realization, like, wow, a lot of prophecy that was predicted or prophesied back then has already been fulfilled. And it's just cool to see what the Bible says and how it's been fulfilled. It gives you re-encouragement in your own faith and really just encouragement where it's like, God, like you're doing things, you're a God of your word, and one day you will return. So really, really, I wouldn't say easy book. It is an easy book the way it's written, but it'll break down a lot of the questions you might have in Revelation and what does this mean and symbology. Like, really good book. So, Mom, thanks again. Recommend that for anybody.
That's good stuff. All right, so I mentioned how a couple of my book recommendations, we're going to talk about people from previous episodes. We covered the Cost of Discipleship. That was Trav.
Yep.
We talked at the beginning of the episode. Again, I'm just going to say this again. A huge inspiration for us starting the podcast, probably the most impressive and most inspiring example that I've ever seen of living a Christian life well is our friend Beth Orlowski. And the episode we did with her and Dave, phenomenal. If you haven't watched that, please do.
Please.
I cannot recommend enough, though. She left us some clues. So she left us the podcast. That's one clue. But if you want to get the whole insider look, and I'm not kidding you guys. I mean, between Kyle and I, we've met thousands of Christians, tens of thousands maybe, of friends, family members, churchgoers, just people we've ever gotten to know. And Beth is one of those people that the second you meet her, you just know something is different.
100%.
And she is just the real deal. She's on fire for God. You know, she spoke about, I'm going to be probably passing away. But she said, in her exact words, she said, I have cancer, so that probably means that I'm going to heaven sooner than most people. And I've never met someone that thinks about the end of life like that. No. It's not, I'm probably going to get sick and pass away. It's, I'm going to be in heaven sooner than you, so I need to get this figured out now.
Yeah, almost felt bad for us, like we're sick.
Totally, that's right. Yeah, it's a good thing. So the book that Beth left us with, and she wrote it herself, is called Fearless and Free. You can get this book on Amazon, but it's a phenomenal read. It talks about her battle with cancer, her story, why she thinks that some of those things happen, some of the prayers she prayed along the way, stories of her husband. So if you're a guy watching this, you want to learn how to love your wife or your spouse better, cannot recommend this one enough. But this is just a book that everybody should read, and it's a story, a memoir of probably one of the biggest influences Kyle and I have had. I would say our biggest fan of Men of the Kingdom. So if you like this show, you can thank Beth, because even on some of our worst episodes, she would comment and say, so inspiring and really cool. So we miss Beth, but her book lives on, and we're just trying to live all those great lessons that she taught us. So couldn't have a book list for 2022 without her in it.
No, absolutely not. And one thing I'll say about her, you touched on, she was the most joyful, like genuinely joyful lady. And the reason that comes up, we were at Salt City Church this last week, and Jordan, one of the pastors there, was talking about his father and how much he inspired him as he was, I think he was battling cancer too, wasn't it?
Yep, his father was.
But just their joy through suffering and through hardship was their biggest testimony towards God. And when he said that, I instantly thought, I looked at Aaron, and I think we both kind of had the same thought. It was Beth. Even though she was struggling with cancer, and like from the outside world perspective, it's like, wow, you are in a tough spot. Her joy through it all was her biggest testimony, and I think that's why you and I, when we were around her, anybody really was like, wow, something's different about her.
Yep.
It's because of her attitude amidst it all, and she was excited to get to heaven. She was excited to get to God. It's like she just looked at life so differently, where most people, including myself, are trying to hold on to life, and she was just open hands, God, whatever happens. And now, thank God she's with him. She was just an amazing woman. And highly recommend that book. Wonderful book. So thank you for sharing that. Moving down my list here, we are on book number 8. It is called Good or God by John Bevere. I actually got this as a gift from some of my Russian friends that are here in the metro area. And I knew John Bevere. He's the author of this book before on some other books like Killing Kryptonite. He has a few other ones that are really good. And I thought this was really good. It talks a lot about, are you pursuing good or are you pursuing God? Which, ironic, is the title. I didn't really help you there, to be honest. But I get caught up in sometimes, and almost to our conversation before here, where it's, are you trying to pursue perfection for you? Is it a worldly sorrow where, hey, I don't want to sin because I don't want to get caught and embarrassed by people? Or is it a godly sorrow because I'm so in tune with God and pursuing His will that? So it just kind of balances, is it something that's good or is it actually God that you're pursuing? So a really, really good book. John Bevere is a really good author. A bunch of his resources are out there. Highly recommend it. Good or God.
Boom. All right, so last year I had this book recommended to me by one of the smartest people that I know.
Did I recommend that?
Oh, no, I don't know. You probably might not have read this one yet. No, we read this one together. So just a great question, too. I mean, as you can tell, a lot of these books have been recommendations, gifts. So if you're watching this, ask the smart people in your life that you admire, that you respect. Ask them, hey, what's your favorite book you've ever read? What's your favorite book you've read in the last year? Yeah. And that's how this book came out. And it felt like once I bought this, I started seeing it everywhere. I would see it at Barnes & Noble. My friends started buying it. And I can say that, and again, tying it back to our 10 Habits episode, one of the ones that I said was saying no and tying that into the Sabbath. Yeah. So in today's day and age, we have a million things going on. You and I are traveling out of state this weekend. You know, you're leading the connection group. Our connection group's meeting. We have church. I'm doing wedding planning. You have all these things going on, full-time jobs, lifting, spending time with friends, family, all that. And I think a lot of times our busyness is what gets in the way of having a really deep spiritual life. So the book that I have to combat that is The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Marc Comer. And if you're going to read this book, I also recommend that there's a workbook that goes along with it. And it talks through all these different disciplines on how you can slow down, be more in tune with God, add Sabbath time into your life, what it looks like. Very, very good book. This is so countercultural, but so important.
Quick question for you, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
When you started Sabbathing with Sammy, was it because of this book or before it? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was because of this book.
It was? Okay.
Yeah, totally.
It might have been.
Totally. And even just the concept, this book, on one hand, is hard to read because it's so convicting. You say, he even talks about how we touch our phones thousands of times a day. Yeah. I remember reading that thinking, I hate that because I know that's true. Yeah. But at the same time, it's so sweet as you're reading it because you just know it's truth. And it's a message that no one's talking about. Everybody wants you doing more, being on the move, all that. And this book's just all about slowing down. I think he even says that hurry is the enemy of spiritual fulfillment or something to that extent. So can't recommend that book enough. Got to grab that one, read through it, and help you slow down.
It's really good. This is it. Last one, the 10th one.
The 10th and final.
Title is shocking, but I think it's much needed. It's called The Death of Porn. Men of Integrity Building a World of Nobility. I got this as a gift to it's called D Group, a discipleship group. So people who are leading connection groups almost have their own little mini connection group with someone who leads it. So our pastor, Drew Stevenson, got this for all of us guys. I think I read this in a few days just because it was so relevant to the times, but too much needed given us as humans, but especially for men. Highly recommend it. And it's pretty cool. It's written by Ray Ortland, but it's written almost from a perspective as if he was your father writing letters to his son type of thing. So it's really, really touching. And there was one part I wanted to share in here that really impacted me. So for you Lord of the Ring fans, I don't know if you've seen Lord of the Rings, there's one section, I forget his name, I think it's like Gimli or something. It's this little elf guy. He has a big beard. You guys probably know who I'm talking about. And they're in this land, and there's this woman. She's like the princess or the queen of the elves or whatever they are. You can see I'm not much versed in the Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings guy.
But basically, there's one scene where she's giving these gifts to the people within the movie, the main characters, and it gets to him, and she asks what he wants. And he basically said, like, just to look upon you is, like, more than enough. Like, he just had so much reverence for her. And he kind of explained it that in heaven, that's how women are. That's how God perceives his daughters. And so it was just convicting, but also encouraging that I don't always live that way, where I lust and I sin and I mess up for my own pleasure. and it just like hit home, like these are somebody's daughters, these are somebody's mothers, but ultimately these are God's daughters type of things. And just to think that one day we'll all see each other like that. It was just one of those moments I remember very distinctly throughout this book. But really, really good. It's not one of those books where it's like, okay, here's practical tips. While there is some of that, it's not, hey, leave your phone out. It's more getting at the heart of what might be holding you back or why you're struggling with some of these sins. So it really was a huge impact on my life. I think in the beginning it even talks about it's like you're missing hope is the one thing missing. And it just kind of dives in a little bit about God's heart towards us. And for those of us who are, feeling guilty about sexual sin and lust, highly recommend it. The Death of Porn by Ortland. So that's awesome. Anything you want to add before we shut her down? This is a super good list of books, these 5.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing those.
Yours were good too.
Really, really cool.
No, if Julianne's listening to this, just keep sending Kyle these good books so we can have content for our show. But I don't know, man. I'm excited for what we're going to do this year. I know this is just the beginning. And hey, if you're not subscribed, would you subscribe to our show? If you're watching these, we're trying to get over 100 subscribers. Yeah. That's one of our first goals. But hey, tell your friends about this. Share this. We want to advance the kingdom. We're trying to grow this thing. So I don't know. If you've been watching this, thank you, and subscribe because there's some good stuff coming this year. But what's on your mind as we wrap up?
No, this is really good. I'm just encouraged by the books you've shared. But again, we've said this multiple times. This show is not just designed for us to speak to you. We would also love to hear from you. So if you want to put something in the comments, maybe some books that have impacted your life, whether it's spiritually, professionally, relationally, whatever it is, please let us know. Because we're guys who want to learn, who want to read and learn from other people. And there's a lot of smart people who watch this show. So we'd love to hear from you. So we're just really excited. For those of you who joined us in 2021, we're small, we're growing, and we're excited for those who are going to find this video, who are watching it now. We hope you kind of join our community, learn with us, pursue God, and we really do hope these book recommendations help. So also want to say happy late New Year. We're excited for the new year. Thank you for joining us. We're excited to see you on the next episode. And until then,
keep advancing the kingdom.